I'm Ben Ryman, and this is Behavior Speak.
It's also why it's so important that we're presenting trainings in a language that people understand, but also that we're implementing it with programs that are culturally relevant. You know, things as simple as Friday prayers. That's something that you wouldn't find in research that's presented in the West, obviously, because it's not something that's very relevant to the Western culture, but it is very relevant to the UAE culture. Why not use BSE to teach prayer to individuals when that's going to give access to so many social opportunities? You know, that's where people, meet up. That's where families go together. The boys go with their fathers to the Friday prayers, and they see their cousins and their neighbors there. And there's so many learning opportunities that people can get from that.
In this conversation, Amina Maliki shares her journey into behavior analysis, highlighting the importance of cultural relevance in training and the impact of the competent learner model. She discusses her research on parenting programs in the UAE, emphasizing the need for training facilitators in Arabic and the significance of parent involvement in learning. Amina reflects on her personal experiences as a mother and the broader implications of behavior analysis in supporting individuals with disabilities. The discussion also touches on the concept of people of determination and the role of leadership in fostering community support. Welcome, Amina.
Hey, Ben. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you. Before we get started, I want to acknowledge I am producing this podcast on the lands of the Tlam and Clayus, Homoko, Comox, and Seychelles First Nations. And as always, I'm grateful to be here. So, Amina, tell me a little bit about yourself.
So, I'm a board-certified behavior analyst, and I live in the United Arab Emirates in Abu Dhabi. I guess I've always been interested in psychology and in behavior. And I'm really interested in disseminating some evidence-based strategies and doing research and training, and that's really where my interests lie.
Amazing. So how'd this all start for you? How did you find behavior analysis? How'd you get into the field?
So as I mentioned, I've always really been interested in psychology and behavior. As a child, I grew up in Scotland. My mother's Scottish and my father's Arab. So I grew up in Scotland, and then we moved to the UAE where I finished my high school. And I think those kind of living in different cultures and having that combined culture from my parents also shaped how interested I am in different cultures and in behaviors across cultures. So after school, I traveled to Australia to get my bachelor in behavioral science psychology. And after that, I came back to the UAE where I worked in schools. And by that time, I had my eldest daughter. And it was around about that time that she got diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. And so I was kind of looking at all of these different workshops and attending all these seminars and things so that I could learn more, about how to best support her. And a lot of those workshops were actually presented by the Emirates College of Advanced Education here in Abu Dhabi by Professor Michelle Kelly. And when I heard that Professor Kelly had developed a verified course sequence master's degree in applied behavior analysis, of course, I was really interested in attending that. And so I got my master's in ABA. Then I worked towards getting my supervision hours to become board certified, and the rest is history.
So when was this?
So I graduated 2021. And then I was one of the last batches to get certified by the BACB in 2022 before they closed it for international, for at least people in the UAE and some other international countries.
Right. And so you found behavior analysis through looking for more schooling, or was it through trying to find services for your daughter?
It was mostly through a personal interest, but also my interest as a mother in being the best parent I could. So that kind of combined interest as well as the need, obviously, like to learn more and understand more, led me towards ABA. As I was getting my supervision hours, I worked in early intervention.
Do you have a certification with the International Behavior Analysis Organization, the Qualified Applied Behavior Analysis Credentialing Board? the Behavior Analyst Certification Board, or are certified through your region's Behavior Analyst Credentialing Board, you can earn continuing education units for this episode by going to www.behaviorspeak.com and clicking on CEUs. The first secret word is learning.
Prevention in nurseries where we provided ABA. And after that, I worked in adult residential healthcare, from which I really learned a lot. You really learn a lot from adults who have kind of been through the lifespan. And I currently, as I mentioned, I currently work as training and research manager at AMB, where we also provide early intervention services.
So tell me a little bit about your about MB and the work you're doing there and your interest in research.
Yeah, sure. So what I really love about where I work at the moment is that, yes, we provide early intervention services, but we implement the competent learner model, which was developed by Vicky Tucci, and it's really trauma informed. It's all about person-centered ABA, and, it's the best of ABA. It's how ABA should be. What we see in our students and, also implementing with my kid at home is amazing. It really is, because it's based about building repertoires from which generative learning happens. So we really see we reap the rewards of our effort. We also have a training division at AMB, and this is, obviously what I really love doing. This is my current role, and I'm very passionate about disseminating evidence-based practices, but also I'm really interested in presenting information in a way that people are able to digest it and apply it. And whether that is presenting it in a language that they understand, using cultural references that people understand, that are relevant to them, whether it's teaching skills that are relevant to the UAE and to families here compared to what might be relevant, say overseas or in the West. So we try and make a difference as much as we can.
Well, that feeds well kind of into how I found you and this paper that you were involved in. Can you tell me a little bit about the paper and kind of why you wrote it and why that work was being done?
Yeah, absolutely. So the study's called Evaluating the Effects of Arabic Medium Behavioral Skills Training on Parenting Program Facilitators in the UAE. And it came about out of quite an exciting initiative called the Abu Dhabi Parenting Program, which was funded by the Abu Dhabi Early Childhood Authority. And it's a homegrown parenting program, which was developed in collaboration with 3 local universities. And it's basically designed to help mothers of young children strengthen their relationship with their children, teach their children through play, have fun in their role as parents. And, it's special because it was developed here in the UAE. It was delivered in English and in Arabic. So we were able to cater to the multicultural parents that we have over here. And it's also tailored to, the needs and the cultural diversity of families in Abu Dhabi. So what we really wanted to do with this study, what the research team, me and my research team wanted to do, was look at evidence. Obviously, we were going to implement evidence-based training methods in order to teach the facilitators who were delivering this parenting program. And we implemented behavioral skills training. And what we actually did was, studied that. We studied how BST delivered entirely in Arabic to Arabic speakers would, the effects of that, how it would be, would they be able to maintain those skills, deliver those skills in real life settings? So, as you know, BST is an evidence-based training package. It includes instruction, modeling, rehearsal, and feedback. And it's used a lot in ABA across the world. And there's lots and lots of, evidence to support its use. but there's really limited research on its application in different languages other than English and different in different cultures or different regions of the world. So this is what we wanted to show. We wanted to show that this is a method that can be used to train non-behavior analytic individuals to present non-behavior analytic skills, a language which is relevant to those individuals.
And why was it important to do this in Arabic? And how do you kind of think language maybe impacts the effectiveness of training programs?
It has a huge impact. Language has a huge impact on people's obviously understanding of the concepts that we're presenting, but also of their interest in applying the things that we're teaching. And, the same way that we speak to our students in a language that they're going to understand, we have to be training individuals in a language that is familiar to them and using examples that are familiar and relevant to them. So it's really important that research is done in Arabic and that the trainings are presented in Arabic. Firstly, these were Arabic-speaking facilitators. They were going to be delivering the program to Arabic-speaking moms in Arabic. We live in the United Arab Emirates, so it only made sense that we would actually deliver and train them fully in Arabic.
And how did you go about sort of selecting those facilitators? And was there any challenges in recruiting?
So the facilitators themselves were actually volunteers who came to us through the Abu Dhabi Early Childhood Authority, and they had a range of backgrounds from psychology to social workers to educators, and and they had never heard of ABA before. It's there's good social validity when we asked, if what the trainers thought about behavioral skills training after the study. They definitely said that they'd like it. They would be interested in implementing the same thing in their own workplaces. So, all in all, I think we should do more of this.
And can you elaborate a bit on the specific skills you targeted in the training?
Yeah, absolutely. We targeted skills that were activities that were already present in the parenting program that was going to be delivered. So one was a relaxation activity, one was a role play activity, and one was a think, pair, share activity. So these were things that were already going to be presented to mothers in the program.
And what were some of the key findings around sort of the skill acquisition?
Yeah, so it was really encouraging. After going through the Arabic BST training, all of 4 facilitators were able to master those skills and implement them accurately and confidently with groups of parents. Maintenance was best for the relaxation activity. Um, and I think, if ever we were to do this study again, what we might do is actually have less time in between the training of the facilitator and the parenting program. So there was approximately 3 to 6 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, so maybe we would kind of or do a booster session in between, which might help with the maintenance too.
And were there any challenges in the training piece?
Say any challenges. We were very limited on training time because we were at the same time we were actually training them to deliver the entire program as well as do these, the BST study. So we were limited on time. I don't think there were any difficulties or challenges, but there was something interesting. And what I found interesting was, how different people, kind of grasped some skills immediately. Like honestly, if you're to look at the study, you'd see that after one BST session, mastery, and then they were able to deliver to 100% with the parents. And then with some skills, it would take a lot of kind of booster sessions in order for the participant to be able to deliver it. So obviously there's individual differences, but it's interesting to know that.
And then sort of what implications might your findings have for future kind of parenting programs in the region?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think we have the science. We know that BST works. It's a relatively easy training method. It works, we now know it works delivered in Arabic as well. And I feel like, why not use it? Why are we using any other training methods that might not be evidence-based when what we're training is so important? So these facilitators play an essential role. It's not just about delivering the parenting program accurately. These parents are going to take, what we're teaching them in these sessions home to their kids.
Mm,
And that's creating the new generation of adults here in the UAE.
that's amazing. And so what are maybe, are there next steps to kind of following this study in terms of for the research team, or was this kind of the last bit?
Well, for now, the Abu Dhabi parenting program is being reviewed after the pilot before
First.
it's being disseminated.
Mm.
But I'm really interested to see where that will go. As part of the Abu Dhabi parenting program, there was some other research conducted as well. One of the studies that came about was systematic review of parenting programs in the Middle East region.
Mm,
MENA region. And the findings of those were actually very interesting as well, in
mm,
that there were so few.
mm,
So there's so few studies published on parenting programs that are homegrown in the
mm.
UAE, not just in the UAE, sorry, in the MENA region. And it's interesting to note that the range of strengths in each of the studies, I would say. So a lot of them don't even mention how they trained the facilitators that were presenting this program,
Hmm.
which, I think is a key factor.
Well, why do you think that is? Why do you think there isn't a lot of research in this area? It seems like there would be a
Yeah.
lot of opportunity for it.
So after we kind of filtered the studies out, and so the sad thing is that we did have to filter out studies that weren't, presented in English. So, which is again a language issue. So
Mm.
if, the studies were published in English or
Hmm.
translated into English, then they were included in our study. And if not, then they might not have been. So there were different languages that might have had great studies, but we weren't able to kind of look into what they did in those programs, in those parenting programs that they developed and delivered.
And just more for you, what was kind of the most rewarding aspect of conducting this research?
So I want to say, aside from training the facilitators, which I thoroughly enjoyed, it's great to implement what works and kind of have that validation through research that it does. We implement at our center at A&B, we implement BST to train our own staff on a daily basis, to train paraprofessionals who we train, and other individuals and community workers. So, and we know it works. So having that validation is really helpful. But also, I really like that we were able to explain BST and show individuals who are outside of our field how BST can be implemented and used and how effective it is.
Yeah, really cool. And I really like just seeing more behavior analytic research in other languages. What kind of advice might you give to other researchers looking to conduct similar studies in other culturally diverse settings?
Say go ahead and do it. You take studies that are already there and in English or in Western cultures, different countries. Replicate it in your own place. You might have to edit it for obviously language and cultural relevance. But otherwise, go ahead. We need the research. We know that these things work, and the more research that we're able to do and share. So it's not just about doing the research and having it published, but also share our findings with the people who might implement it in practice. Then we're going to be able to see, a change in the world, hopefully.
I love that. I love that. I wanted to come back a bit to the competent learner model. I see what your voice and your tone change as soon as you bring that up, and I can see you really have a passion for it. And of course, we had Nipa on in a previous episode to talk about some of the work that's happening at A&B. One thing you said that struck me was that you said CLM, competent learner model, is the way ABA should be done. I wonder if you could elaborate more on that and why you feel so strongly about that.
Yeah, so I've heard about how things might be in other places of the world, but I can tell you about how things are in the UAE. And the truth is that unfortunately, ABAs sometimes gets a bad rep, not because of ABA, because it might be implemented by people who aren't qualified in ways that aren't actually, based in the science. And as a result, people have had bad experiences, whether that's some of the parents that we speak to, or whether that's educators who have, seen somebody or heard about horror stories. And so I am very passionate about implementing ABA in a manner that's ethical, that's person-centered, and as I said, as ABA should be. And the competent learner model really provides that. So it's all about learning through play and building essential repertoires that are going to be able to take that student through life. It's not just about learning academics. It's not just about learning specific skills that they might not be able to generalize to other settings or other individuals. It's about repertoires that we build upon through play without any coercion, all child-led interactions in a way that the child is able to then take those skills and those repertoires and use them in the world. And, we have amazing success stories, we really do. It really works well. Now there's a lot of interest in trauma-informed care and, compassionate ABA. But CLM was developed like ages ago, and that is exactly what all the research is now talking about. I'm very proud to say that we do implement CLM. We're one of the few centers that do implement CLM at our center, and through our trainings, we also make sure that we're presenting evidence-based strategies, ABA, in a trauma-informed way.
So can you elaborate a little more on the repertoires you're establishing and why they're so important? They sound like they're really central to the model.
Yeah, absolutely. So the repertoires are listener, talker, pater, observer, problem solver. Which ones did I mention? The participator, talker, writer, reader, listener, observer, and problem solver.
There you go.
There we go. Yeah. So, and basically, it's a very clearly thought of model, which is very easy to implement. It has all of the tools that the interventionist might need, that the supervisor might need, the coach. And it places, so it not only, it places this child as the center. And what's might be different about CLM is that it always makes sure to involve the parents or the caregivers. Like they play an essential role, it's the child's at the center. Then there's the instructor, and then there's the parent. And together, we're working towards kind of building those repertoires. And we begin with the very basics. We begin with participator. We begin with free play. And once we're able to build the skill of participating, that the child actually approaches an adult, approaches another child, approaches a toy, then we're able to, implement, fun, easy, kind of man teaching and building upon those kind of talker repertoires, and until they get to the end of the first 7 lessons. So there's the first 7 lessons really build those foundational skills that children need in order to be able to function in a mainstream environment.
You mentioned the involvement of parents, and that does sound sort of different from typical maybe clinic models where it's, RBTs working and BCBAs working with the child that gets dropped off by the parents and picked up later in the day. Can you tell me a little bit about what like a typical day might look like, and sort of how the parents are involved and how that all works?
Absolutely. Embedded in our dealings with the child and creating the program are our one-to-one parent coaching. So that's kind of something that we do. It's not something additional that we do. It's just something that we do because we know that the parents, if we're with the child for an hour a day, if we're with the child for 6 hours a day, the parents are with them 24/7. And sometimes we also train nannies and we also
Hmm.
train like grandparents. So
Wow.
whoever it is that's delivering, that's going to be interacting with that child most is the person who should know this stuff. And so we believe that with a passion. And as a result, we involve the parents. Our center in Dubai has glass room. Parents are encouraged. Sometimes we beg them to attend
Hmm.
the lessons, but we also understand that sometimes the moms just had a really, really tough day and they
Hmm.
might need to, sit in the reception area with a coffee, with a chat with another mom during the session. And that's okay as well. But we do try and involve the parents as much as possible in
Hmm.
delivering.
I love the idea of the glass room. It seems sort of so counter to what I've heard other places where, folks are sort of almost nervous about having, the families watch and are worried that the family's involvement will, sort of deter from the learning and, because maybe the child is going back and seeking the parents' attention versus seeking the teacher's attention. What does that kind of first phase of free play participation look like so that, we're not teaching the child that we don't want them to come to the parents, but we also still need to have these instructors involved. Like how does that all kind of come together?
So I understand that this is the case for many different centers, but I think we have to kind of shift what we're thinking. What is the problem with the child going to the parent? It makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. The
Mm-hmm.
parent is a highly preferred reinforcer
Right.
for most kids, right? And the pairing has happened. It's been happening for years.
Mm.
And the child feels comfortable and feels safe with their parents. So it's natural, especially to begin with, that the child would, gravitate towards the parent. And it's okay to let the child know, oh, the parent's here, this is where you're coming, but you're coming with your parents. And it's okay, and we encourage the parents to kind of hold the books or hold other items that we're trying to pair. And
Mm. Mm.
the beginning, so I'd say up to the first month to 6 weeks is all about pairing.
Mm.
It really is. It's all about pairing the instructor, pairing the environment, and pairing, different items of interest to the
Mm.
child.
Mm.
And once the instructor has successfully paired with that child says bye-bye to the parent and runs in, towards the instructor and towards the preferred activities that we're presenting to them. And so we're very transparent with parents about this process. We mention to them that it will take time for the parent to happen. It'll look like we're just kind of playing around to begin with. And that can be really frustrating for parents. And I
Mm.
understand that because I'm a parent myself and we want, quick changes. But what we want and what we explain to parents is we want maintained change.
Mm.
We want to build repertoires. We don't want a change that is going to happen only in this environment, only
Mm.
for this hour of the day.
Mm.
So, it works. It works well.
Tell me a little bit more about how you've applied the model in your own parenting.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, I heard and learned about CLM when my eldest daughter was already kind of had received lots of different parenting styles. But
Mm.
one thing that I've quite recently, I'm ashamed to admit, which I've come to terms with, is that with my daughter, my role is mom. My role isn't, ABA practitioner. It
Mm.
isn't BCBA. My role with my daughter is mom. And and some days are hard days, and some days are hard days for her, and some days are hard days for me. And having I always kind of preach compassion with our learners. I preach compassion, with my kids. I preach compassion with the parents and the educators that we train and everybody. And I think, we have to, I'm trying to learn to be compassionate with myself as well at times. and I feel the difference. So I wish I hadn't pushed her as much as I did in the past for certain things that kind of just weren't her interests.
Does the CLM kind of have, because there's so much around parenting and including parenting and parent coaching and all that sort of thing, are there pieces built into CLM to support parents who are struggling and who are maybe mentally feeling like they can't do the work? What does that kind of look like, those kind of supports, when parents maybe aren't as eager to jump in?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's a journey. Okay, it's a journey, and everybody has to, takes that journey at their own pace. And when I say everybody, I mean, the father might be at a different stage of that journey than the mother, and this is something that we often see. So it really has to be individualized to that person and where they're at. Sometimes, we can bombard parents with a lot of information and strategies and things because, obviously we have the learner in mind and we're trying to um get things done as much as we can. But I think first we have to take a moment, look at the parents, where they're at. And so we do a lot of parent coaching. We do acceptance and commitment training. And I think that's the first stage. The first stage is acceptance, coming to terms with everything, and then once they have a few strategies to be able to breathe. Then it's a good time to kind of, okay, so now what can we do, to support you with your child at home.
Great. So I know you've got the sort of the parents involved and the children involved, but I know at A&B you're also training lots of other folks. Can you tell me a little bit more about what else you're doing?
Absolutely. So, as I mentioned, we have the early intervention division and we have the training division, which I'm grateful to head. It's great that we implement, 1-to-1, that we change one individual's life, that we change, the families, but we also want to make a shift in the community. I think, mashallah, there has been such a great shift in awareness regarding autism, developmental delays, people of determination, and that's the term that we use here in the UAE, to refer to people with additional needs. And I think that, the leadership has really been great at not only coining a term that is really empowering for individuals who have disabilities, but also in, kind of can inclusion happen. And so as a result, we're very interested in training the people who interact not just with learners who have disabilities, but also, with the wider community. So we train teachers, we train educators, we train paraprofessionals, so people who deliver one-to-one support. Here we call them learning support assistants. We train, obviously, parents and families, so whether or not their children are part of our program, or receive services from us. And we've also had lots of initiatives to train healthcare professionals. So these amazing doctors who have, 20 plus years of experience in their fields, they've studied for 7 years, and they'll attend a training presented by A&B, and they'll say everything that we've done, everything that we've learned, everything that I do. I don't know how to interact with my patient who has communication deficits or who has aggressive behavior when they come to the appointment. And that's not only a shame, but it's also a need. And I'm very passionate about giving people what they need in order to be able to interact on a day-to-day basis with whoever it is they serve. So we also train a lot of community workers. So people like hairdressers. What do they do if
Wow.
if somebody comes to them who has who has behaviors while they're holding sharp scissors? Um, and a lot of it, as I mentioned before, a lot of it is starting before ABA. So starting, from changing mindsets, from acceptance, from instead of blaming the other, blaming the parent, blaming,
Hmm.
teacher, blaming, the other. It's about perspective taking. It's about making those mind shift changes in order for people to be able to then implement what they know works.
Wow, that's awesome. Can you tell me a little bit more about that term, the people of determination, where that comes from, what that means? Why do they use that term?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, who is the ruler of Dubai, he coined this term back in 2016, and it really, really caused this huge movement in the
Hmm.
UAE. So, people had kind of been working behind the scenes in our field. And
Hmm.
after that term was coined, it really shifted people's attention, I think, to individuals who did have additional needs. And the idea behind it is that we don't want to refer to people as disabled, which isn't really a term that kind of inspires, action and everything that some of these individuals, amazing individuals, are able to do, but actually focus on what they are able to do. And
Hmm.
so people of determination is the coin that is the term that's used here. And I think it has shifted people's perspectives about individuals who have disabilities.
Hmm.
Language is powerful.
Yeah. It seems unique for someone sort of that status to sort of decide to make that change. Do you have any awareness of sort of what motivated him to do that? Did he have family of his own, or what was, do you have any idea?
We're very known in the UAE for things that are unique. I'll have to say that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The second secret word is model.
Like somebody was saying the other day, they were saying, every family, every Emirati family has at least one person who's a person of determination.
Hmm.
And, I don't know if that's the case for other places around the world. I know, I don't know if there are places that have, kind of hidden individuals who have,
Hmm.
disabilities and things, but it's definitely the case here. We see a lot of Emirati families that do have some form of additional need, and whether that's physical or intellectual or what be
Hmm.
it. And I think we forget how big a part of the community individuals who have additional needs are, and how much they can contribute to our communities if only given the chance. And the families that you know are living in the community also need the support and the opportunities that will help them live better lives.
No, I like the just not using kind of that sort of deficit discourse to describe folks. And the one place that I have heard that conversation is the indigenous communities I've spoken to, sort of on this side of the world. They don't have words. A lot of them don't have words for disability in their language, and this sort of deficit discourse is a very Western kind of approach to things. The pathological, the medical model,
Medical model.
those kinds of conversations. And some of these communities, I know I had one early interview with a guy named Grant Bruno, and he talked about how again, the word they had that in their language translated kind of loosely to people who think different.
I love that.
Yeah, yeah, and it was lovely. And then I would interview further folks from other tribes and nations, and they all had sort of a similar kind of translation. That was really interesting. That they always come in from that sort of strength based approach, and so it's lovely to see that's happening in your neck of the
Yeah,
woods.
it is. And when it comes from the leadership, it really filters down.
Hmm.
Really filters down.
Yeah.
Um, you know, um, we are very lucky here in the UAE to have leadership who are very aware of these kind of maybe margin populations. I wonder, and it's so interesting that you say that about indigenous communities. Have you seen or heard of? Is there any difference in how they interact then with people who think differently?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, he talked about, so something that a lot of indigenous folks talk about is which I think is similar in other cultures, is there's a real importance of tradition and ceremony and spirituality kind of within kind of everything they do. And in fact, a lot of the efforts in the conversations that I've had with Indigenous researchers. So just as sort of an example, I think Indigenous teens are 10 times more likely to commit suicide than any other sort of person in the population. And so suicide prevention is a huge area of research for Indigenous folks in health and other areas. And a lot of it's around prevention. And most of the prevention research centers down to getting folks back into doing the traditional practices that they have done for thousands and thousands of years, everything from hunting for their own food, gathering their own food, preparing their own food, engaging in tradition and dance and song. And all of these activities are communal, collective, and we're now actually starting to, the Indigenous folks knew this all along, but we're now starting to see sort of the data, as it were, kind of proving that this return to traditional ways of being is a huge preventative factor in so many kind of mental health kind of issues. And so Grant talked about how, Grant Bruno, he's a recent PhD and is sort of making waves in sort of bringing Indigenous ways of being to autism research around the world. And he's also, like yourself, a parent of a child with autism. And he's done a couple documentaries on him and his son. And he talks about how he includes his son in all of the ceremonial activities of the tribe, in the longhouse and the dance and those sorts of things. And he says he describes those ceremony contexts as being the most inclusive environments you can find because they're so centered around everyone belonging and everyone being there. There's obviously some a bit of training that has to be done and some sort of things around sort of sensory issues and so on and so forth. But just that the ways of being of these communities are inclusive from the beginning.
Yeah.
I remember I interviewed a behavior analyst in Senegal, and she was working in kind of a small Senegalese community, and she talked again about sort of the collective society of the community and how everyone knew each other. And so when a child would sort of disappear from the home, in North America, we'd call that elopement and 911, missing person, all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
In this community, it was never elopement because every single household would welcome this child running into their home,
Wow.
whether they knew him or not. And so that sort of strength-based collective approach was really it really makes a big difference.
One of the famous quotes from Sheikh Zayed, who was the founding father, God rest his soul, of the UAE, is if you don't have a history, you don't have a present, and you don't have a future. And it's interesting because, like, the UAE, had such a transition from the 70s, complete desert, really small communities, things that like what you mentioned just now, and to a fully modern, westernized, country, right? International country, international hub. And people, who are parents now, or they might just be grandparents, they say all the time, they say, we always had individuals like that. They might not have called it autism, but they always kind of said, we've always had somebody in the family or somebody or a neighbor or, somebody that we went to school with. And they were, automatically included. It wasn't a question of whether they would be included or not. If there was a wedding, they'd go to the wedding. If there was, Friday prayers, they'd all go to Friday prayers. And maybe they didn't, pray exactly the correct way or do, but it would be a lot of kind of peer-based support that they'd be given. And it was just the norm. It was the norm. And with modernization and kind of more a movement towards a nuclear family unit and here in the UAE, I feel like this has somehow, gotten lost a bit. And, we're aware of it, like as a country, the leadership, the authorities, we're really aware of that shift. And there's now a movement back towards making sure that we are, training using culturally relevant, skills and culturally, bringing back everything, as you mentioned just now, like bringing back the Emirati culture that that is inclusive in and of itself. And that's also, it's also why it's so important that we're presenting trainings in a language that people understand, but also that we're implementing it with programs that are culturally relevant. Things as simple as toilet training routines and or like Friday prayers. That's something
Mm.
that you wouldn't find in research that's presented in the West, obviously, because
Mm-hmm.
it's not something that's very relevant to the Western culture, but it is very relevant to the UAE culture.
Mm.
Why not use BST to teach a prayer to individuals when that's
Mm.
going to access to so many social opportunities? That's where people, meet up. That's where families go
Mm.
together. The boys go with their fathers to the Friday prayers, and they see their cousins and their neighbors there. And
Yeah.
there's so many learning opportunities that people can get from that. But because, it might not be something that somebody has thought of yet, or
Mm-hmm.
thought of looking into in terms of research. It's not something that's done, but it is important. It's important that we do what we're doing, and hopefully as many people as possible can do lots of work in this area.
For sure. I know you said you're passionate about behavior analysis in kind of areas beyond autism. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Abu Dhabi parenting program is a program that isn't necessarily for individuals
Hmm.
who
Okay.
have autism. It's a parenting program, and so that's what one area. Just basic parenting skills, but also teaching teaching skills to people that they can learn through implementing ABA. There's automatically here, and I think, rightly so as well. I think that it's important that we do implement ABA for individuals who do have autism or developmental delays, but also it's almost associated here in the UAE. ABA is kind of associated with, oh, that's for the autistic community.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a wide field.
Hmm.
There's so much that can be done with ABA.
Hmm.
We can use it to train staff. We have huge huge organizations here who have thousands of staff, and simple behavior management strategies.
Hmm.
I think, in terms of wellness and in terms of having that work life balance, we all have very busy lives, here
Hmm.
in the UAE, and finding that work life balance. I think it's also important to implement things like acceptance and commitment
Hmm.
therapy, and kind of evidence based mindfulness techniques, self management strategies. These are all things that, it's also been implemented, in kind of sports, I know, in Dubai, which I think is really interested in terms of personal training, personal trainers. How do they train the individuals that they work with? And
Hmm.
there's just so much. There's so much that can be done, and I'd love to get to a stage where people can understand the potential of ABA and take whatever their interest is
Hmm.
forward, with that evidence-based practice, and then implement it in the field that they're in.
Hmm. That's awesome. Well, what's next for you? What are sort of the next few years look like for you?
We're trying to take one day at a time.
Hmm.
I love what we're doing at the moment. I think, it's so important, and we have to be doing more. We're a very small community of passionate ABA folk here in the UAE. I would like to grow that community. I would like to make sure that what we know is being delivered in a language that people can understand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when I say a language that people can understand, I don't just mean Arabic. Yes,
Mm.
I do mean Arabic, and other languages that are spoken here. We have so many languages that are spoken here in the UAE. But also, I mean, in a way that people can be able to implement things in practice. They can listen, they can hear what you're saying. They can be like, that makes sense to something that happened to me yesterday or something that I saw
Hmm.
today. Let
Yeah.
me try that tomorrow. To be able to take those action steps forward. And, there is quite a lot of jargon
Hmm.
in ABA. I mean, just the title ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, تحليل السلوك التطبيقي. It's often a very confusing term for people who we present
Hmm.
it to. And I think if we're able to present what we know in a way that people are able to understand, digest, and find relevant to them, I do believe that ABA can change the world.
Amazing. I mean, it's been really cool chatting with you and learning all about the good work you're doing. Thanks for coming on the
Thank you
show.
so much, and it's been a joy speaking to you today.
Awesome. To learn more, check out these episodes of Behavior Speak. Episode 238, Behavior Analysis in Bahrain with Ingi Ali Reza. Episode 209, Vicky Tucci and the Competent Learning Model with Nipa Bhuktani. Episode 149, Behavior Analysis in Saudi Arabia with Dr. Shahada Sharif. And episode 37, The Realities of Autism in First Nations Communities in Canada with Grant Bruno. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok and subscribe to our YouTube page at Behavior Speak. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. The third secret word is parent.